I'm gonna mute you.
All right, so we're officially live. Oh, good morning. Happy Friday. It's July 19th, 2019. How fast is this year going by? It feels like it just started a minute ago.
Right?
And like this last week, many of you know, I've gone to therapy for many, many years, actually over 20 years now, consistently just about every week without barely missing a week. And I have it on Thursday nights. And last night, it seemed like it was like the week since the previous session, kind of a benchmark for me every week is like, because I get into therapy and I talk about the past week and whatever. And it just seemed like it flew by. It seemed like 2 days went by and I was in therapy again. It's just like bizarre, like crazy.
It's only for July for you. It's been happening all year for May.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's really flying. I guess that means I'm busy. Right?
You mean it's not 2017?
It is. It actually is. It is. Your calendar's wrong. Everybody's got to dial it back 2 years. It's like it's not daylight savings. It's like planetary savings. We just roll clocks back 2 years, and
boy, the things I could do with those extra 2 years again.
I know. Imagine what I could do with an extra 2 years. On the bottom left, you'll see the video. Click that. Oh, are you trying to encourage Stuart?
Yeah.
I think he knows.
Assistance.
I think he knows. I think his camera is intentionally.
No, he asked how to.
Oh, did he? I didn't see
Yeah, so Stuart, you just hover near the bottom, a little bar pops up, and then beside the microphone is the stop video or start video.
Oh, but you have to have a camera connected. That's important.
Well, that would be important.
So that's why you are the
Sometimes we forget the simplest steps.
Yep.
I'm smart.
SMRT.
Okay, SMRT. I like that. Hashtag SMRT. All right, let's go into the strategy forum so I can just monitor all the feeds. Now, Matthew, what did I need to do? Tag you or something?
Not anymore. I was just saying if you made me one of the panelists, I could have invited people in, but you got it handled already.
Look at that. Yeah. We got everybody in right away. Everybody joined. Nobody was late. But you know what, Matthew? Just in case we have a latecomer, I'll make you the co-host.
You're awesome. And real quickly, I got to clarify some things real quick. Stuart, you guys deserved to win. You guys did. Toronto played a better game.
A.
They
brought their AA game? Oh, I'm so punny.
You're so funny.
Kids today. All right, so who wants to talk about Airtable? That didn't sound very enthusiastic. It was kind of, I guess.
Airtable's pretty amazing. Does a lot of amazing stuff.
It is. I've been doing a lot of amazing things with it. I've been having fun, like building stuff in Airtable, which is probably why it keeps creeping into our Friday Zooms with different use cases. That and the fact that I'm struggling to come up with ideas every week. Just kidding.
Like Legos to you, isn't it?
Kidding, not kidding. It is kind of like Legos to me. It's like I just, whose advertising slogan is it where I think that it's just the phrase build something. I feel like that was some company's advertising slogan.
Elon Musk.
Let's build something. No, I think it's like Home Depot or Lowe's. I think it's Lowe's because I feel like I can hear Gene Hackman's voice in my head going, let's build something. Maybe. I don't know. I could be just completely meshing different things from different places into one.
Maybe you've started something new yourself.
Let's build something. But I don't want to give that away to Airtable unless they pay me for it, unless they hire me as their marketing executive and pay me like $250,000 a year with full benefits.
Build something's already a website.
Oop, I just put that out there in the universe. Airtable got a lot of funding in the past year too. Like I think a couple 150 millions or something like that.
Wow.
Which is also, by the way, when I'm looking at an app, and all joking aside, that's important because you know if they're well funded, they're not going anywhere, right? You don't want to just pick an app because the app is cool, or certainly not because it's the new shiny squirrel. You got to look at the team behind the app, the company that sits behind the app.
Depends on how cool the app is too.
Yeah, but you don't want to get too into an app even if it's really cool, only to find that it goes away in a year. Because then you're
and then you're seriously disappointed.
Yeah, not only that, but now you got to work to move whatever you had accumulated in that app and into another solution, and it's a whole new.
Why you
That's
always
always
the inputs and the outputs.
Yeah. That's always something that you need to consider when you're looking at a new app is what is the exit strategy,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yep.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't try Face App on Facebook.
Don't try what?
The
Face
age
app?
app on Facebook.
So, Matt, you're going to be spammed by the Russians telling you to vote for Trump next election.
Good thing I'm colorblind and can't see red.
Oh.
Wow. All right. No religion or politics on my webinar.
It wasn't meant to be. It was.
Hey, look, it's Greg. Greg, what's on your shirt? Is that a chicken? I love that.
Nerd bird.
I have happy hour. My kind of happy hour. Cup of Joe,
Happy
sitting on a
Hour.
log with a campfire and my dog.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep, life is good. All right, let's do this. Let's do this. Sometimes I get complaints that we yap for too long before we get into the meat. Every once in a while
You're
somebody
going to
says,
get complaints about everything. You can't always please everyone all the time.
Gina, my mission in life is to please everyone all the time. I have to
Yeah,
do
but
it.
you should be first. Number one on the pleasing list should be you.
Please myself. All right, we can go
I
all kinds of
agree.
wrong places
That's
with
first.
that one, so I'll leave it alone. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Everybody can see my screen. Greg, is my screen being properly shared? Where'd he go?
It says 8:11. Good morning, Seth.
All right.
What is your main focus?
I rely on Greg. Greg, we don't have your audio for some reason. I see your lips moving. I don't hear anything.
How about now?
Much better. Much, much better. Mucho better. All right, I'm just pulling up my my participants list here and my chat so I can see if you guys are saying bad things about me while I do this.
Never.
Just getting ready. All right, so the impetus. Notice, by the way, I've gotten so into Airtable that it has its own folder in my browser bookmarks on the bookmarks bar. That's how you know something is really important. If you ever see your name up here, it means something to me. Anyway, I'm going to go into Airtable, and we're going to start a new base. By the way, when you start accumulating lots of bases like this, you got to use the search. The search actually does work really well. All right, we're going to start from scratch. Scratchy scratch. So what is this one? Educational resources. All right, and we'll pick a pretty color. That's not pretty enough. Let's do light green. Okay, perfect. And then get me in. All right, so, and I purposely wanted to start from scratch with this because my plan for today was to kind of show you how I build this from scratch, right? So this was inspired, as you may know if you kind of read some of the description that I put out there, by something Hector did, Hector Garcia. First of all, I got to thank Hector and give props to him for touting my Bulletproof Bookkeeping course as the best paid QuickBooks Online bookkeeping resource on the planet. That's what he said. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it was something like that, that it was the best on the planet. And I want to thank him for that. But that came in the context of a bigger picture video that he did on kind of, resources for getting started with accounting or maybe even continuing with accounting. And then Jan had posted in her USA Bookkeeping Community group on Facebook about the importance of keeping up with your education and started listing some resources and things. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to create something in Airtable where any individual could just track the resources that they want to track in terms of what they use, upcoming webinars, courses, whatever it might be, to track what they want to keep up with educationally speaking. So the first thing is, when we create the base from scratch, it comes up with just generic table 1. We're going to double click this and we're just going to call this resources because that's the main table. First, I have to learn how to type, so bear with me. All right, so we're going to start with resources. And then the first thing is going to be, the event or course title or whatever it might be, right? So this is going to be the main thing. Remember that the first column in Airtable is like your primary column. It's key. If you're trying to reference anything in this table from another table, it's going to look in this column, and this is the only column you can look in. So always bear that in mind when you're kind of planning these things out, is what you want to be able to, how you want to be able to reference things. Normally this should be the primary thing. So in this case, the event or course title makes perfect sense, right? We're going to hide these two fields because I want them here, but I want them at the end. And as I add new columns, they're going to be in the way. So this is just like a little Airtable developer tip, right? If I click hide fields, I'm just going to turn these two off for now. So they're not gone, they're just out of the way for a minute. And the next one we want to do is the event date. Right, and then the type, of course, is going to be date. Notice I can type in the search when I know what I'm looking for the type of field, so that makes it a lot faster. You'll probably be thinking, let's include the time, but no, I'll explain why in another second. Because what I want to do with this is I want to have a separate start and end time, right? So I'm actually going to do. You could actually combine it. Come to think of it, so I would do start. Time, and you'll see it'll include the date. So now we will include a time field, right? You can do 12 or 24-hour format, and this is only important if you have collaborators in this, so I'll leave that alone. Okay, and then we're going to do end time, and if you know it's going to be substantially the same kind of field, let me delete this. You can right-click and just choose duplicate field, and then I'll just rename this to end time. Okay. Next, who's the author, right? Is it Hector? Is it Veronica Wasik? Is it me, right? But as soon as I get to something like this, I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking about the fact that this is something that's probably going to be repeated throughout this table, right? Because I might be subscribing to many resources from the same author. So as soon as I see something like this, it screams of building another table out. And that's exactly what I want to do here. I want to create an empty table. We're going to call it authors. Okay, and then here we have the author name. Okay, then again, we're going to hide these two fields, get them out of the way. And let's just say company. Right, and then maybe website, and that we can set up as a URL field type. Okay, and then we could do like things like social media, like Facebook page or something, or Facebook, group. Also would be a URL type. So this way I can track the information about the authors or teachers, for that matter, of these resources that I want to keep track of. So it helps me keep it in one place where I might want to keep tabs about what they have upcoming, right? So we're going to come back to that. So now that we have this, I'll put myself in here, obviously, as a quick example. So this is going to be Nerd Enterprises Incorporated. And for the website, we're going to use my new website, of course. So where am I? There. So it's just easier to copy and paste that, widen that column up, right? And then we'll go to the Between Wall and Main Facebook group and put that in as the group, because this, of course, is what you would want to use for me, because this is where I post all the announcements about each Friday Zoom and anything else I'm doing. So now that I've got at least one example in here set up, let's get rid of the blanks. It's important not to have blanks in here. You'll see why. It just kind of makes it messy when you're linking to something. So now I'm back to the original resource table. And for the author, I'm going to change the type, and I'm going to link to another record. And I'm going to link to a record in the authors table. I'm not going to allow linking to multiple records. I suppose I could, because there might be a webinar that's given by two people, come to think of it. So let's allow that, right? Like Hector and Michelle. So let's do it that way. So now the event course title might be like today's event, right? So I would put today's Zoom in here. The starting time would be today the 19th at 8 a.m. Ending time, I can copy and paste that and just change that to 9 a.m. And then I can add myself. If I start typing my name, it comes up. And notice it comes up with some of the first few pieces of information I included in that table. So I can clearly see as I'm selecting, here's the company, here's the website, right? And what this does is it creates a reference also to, to that record. So if I click on my name from here, it gives me a pop out into the record from the author's table here.
Seth, just a
Yeah.
question on that. So then every table, does it have to have like a unique one? So you can't use Seth David as, like maybe an instructor as well, if you had an instructor tab?
I could, I mean, I would think the instructors would come from the author tab, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, you could, I might have two separate columns in here though, one for the author, one for the instructor, if I wanted to distinguish that way.
But could you have Seth David, like if you had a tab called authors and one called instructors, could you have the name Seth David, or do they have to be unique?
No, you could repeat. You could, I know what you mean. In sort of database concept, the primary field would never have a duplicate, but in this case, you can have duplicates in the primary field. I think that's what you mean, right? Tiffany? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I put the thumbs up. I didn't want to interrupt again.
Oh, no, you can interrupt all you want. You're Tiffany. You have carte blanche for interruptions.
Thanks, Seth.
You're welcome. Okay, so yeah, so resources. So notice the process of building. I get to this and I'm like, okay, I need or want another table for this. And so I'm going to do it. This could be done any number of ways. I could also do this as a drop down. If I know that there's just 4 or 5 instructors that I want to kind of follow, and I don't care about being able to kind of link to their information, the reason I like doing it this way for this purpose is, especially for this, I can click through to here, and I can click right through to the website or the Facebook page, right? So it makes it nice to manage all from one place. Let's see, what did I want to include here next? How about a category? Right? So we want to categorize this stuff. This, I think we would do as a drop-down. We could also do another table for this. But let's say I do a single select. And let's see, what might be categories where we would categorize the sort of subject matter, I guess, for the webinars and the resources. We can do like bookkeeping for my bulletproof bookkeeping, right? What else could we do? Come on, throw some ideas at me. What else? What other categories can we include?
Marketing.
Marketing, I like it.
Workflow and process improvement.
That's a good one. Okay.
See, I'm not just good to remind you to share your screen.
I know, you have other uses too. That's awesome.
I'm multifunctional.
And really
QuickBooks
cool
Online
shirts
Advanced.
too.
Oh, wait, no.
How about like social media? That kind of goes with marketing though. SEO, let's do that. All right, so that's good just to start. And by the way, you can alphabetize this in a click, right? You can also reorder them however you want. Now, the order matters in more ways than you think. Once I establish the order of the single select stuff, if I want to sort by this list, it's not going to sort it alphabetically. It's going to sort it in this order. If I've alphabetized it, of course, then that becomes alphabetical, right? But that's important to know. Also, with the paid version, you have a greater selection in your color palette. I might do green for bookkeeping. Let's do like a cool blue for marketing. SEO, we can do like yellow. And I like that color for workflow and process improvement. So I'll click save, right? And you can add stuff on the fly. If you just type something in here and it's not included in the list, you'll get an option to add it. Kind of like any drop down in a lot of apps that we're familiar with, right? So let's just do bookkeeping courses. Well, no, this is not bookkeeping courses. This is Airtable. So Airtable would probably go under workflow and process improvement. Agreed? Okay. So that's for the category. Now let's do one for the format, which I'm also going to do as a single select drop down. Where did it go? And this would be live, recorded. Obviously, the live ones are probably eventually going to get changed to recorded, something like that. What else might I want to track? How about the registration URL? And that, of course, is going to be a URL. And save. And the recording URL, once that's available, this way this becomes a permanent resource, even for stuff after the fact, right? Again, URL. Okay, and now let's bring back our notes and attachments. It does remember their place, and I can click and drag these to the right, but when I already have this many columns, it's much easier to reorder them here. See how that works? Okay, so we have a basic structure in place, which is pretty good. We have what we need where we can start adding stuff in. But before we even start adding more stuff in, as long as we have one good record in place, right? This one is live. Here, I'll even grab you the registration URL for today's, right? Because I have it in my actual events calendar one. Okay, the recording URL is not available yet. And here's where you can even take notes while you're watching, right? If you're keeping track of it. It's limited. It's like a generic plain text notepad. You can't really do much by the way of formatting. It will render hyperlinks if you paste a link in here. So it's your choice, obviously. If you use something like OneNote, that's going to be a lot richer in terms of your capabilities in formatting. What I might even do, though, is take the notes in OneNote and then stick a link in here in the notes that links to my note in OneNote, just so I have this as kind of command central with all the breadcrumbs I need to access any sort of peripheral resources that I'm using in tandem with the actual educational resource that I'm tracking and logging here. Everybody good? Everybody cool with that? All right, and of course, if there's any files, let's say the webinar has a PDF or something that goes with it, I can certainly attach that here, so it's always here for reference whenever I want to go back and review this resource, okay? Now, this is, by default, I have the table, right? This whole thing is a base. These are tables, resources, and authors, and then within each table, I have different views, right? So I might want to call this the master list or something. I just double-clicked it to rename it. But now what I probably want to do is add a view for a calendar, right? Because the calendar view is kind of nice, especially if I start populating this with a lot of stuff. I can go to the calendar view, we'll use the start type, and then we have an end date field. So I can do start time and end time in my calendar, so it will show me both. And then I can click done. You can add a Gantt block, but I'm not going to. I find Gantt sort of distracting, right? And so notice what it does. It's got today's right in there on the 19th. And I can click on it right from here, and it gives me the basics, and I can click expand record, and it gives me the blowout of the whole thing. Notice here I can also link out to the author. So this is what I love about Airtable. It's very slick. It's very smart. Everything's kind of linked, right? And similar to your Google calendars, you can change your view to a 2-week view, a 1-week view, a 3-day view, or just today, right? So I love that too. Now the other thing is you can color code stuff in here. Notice in this view, it also on the right-hand side kind of lists all the same records, and it'll just, as I add, it'll just stack those. And from here, I can actually add a brand new record right from here. Makes it really easy to do. And now I've just created 2 unnamed records. So let's go back to the master list, and we're going to delete those. Okay, and so this is how you toggle your views. Same place where I double click to rename it, you just click once, or you can click the down arrow next to it, and now I can flip over to the calendar real quick. But what we may want to do is color code stuff, right? Now we could color code it by the category, for example. So if I want to select a field, and it defaults to category, it kind of figures out, all right, we've got a drop-down list in here, maybe that's what we want to do. But obviously I can change that. So now what it does is it color codes it so I can clearly see by category, that this is a workflow and process. This is the green color that I chose for that, right? Another way to do that is to set a condition, right? And a lot of times like in my event calendar, I actually do this based on a condition. I do it based on the date. So where the start time is, let's say today, then I would, and here's where you choose the color, I would choose like, bright red. I want it to stand out like, hey, this is today, right? And then I can add another color, right? So maybe where the start time is in the future. And you can look at the logic. Notice there's a drop down next to the word is. So I can say is after today. And whatever, I can just pick a color for that. And then let's do one more. I wonder if I can actually duplicate this one, because the one I want to do next is substantially similar. Sure enough, there's the duplicate. Okay, and this is going to be for ones that are in the past. We'll just kind of use black. So before today. Right? So when you learn, some of these little details like, oh, I can duplicate a condition, it just speeds things up a little bit. Right? So now if we add one, let's say I go ahead and add last week's in here, right? So last week's was track your subscriptions with Airtable versus ClickUp. Okay, it was Friday the 12th, 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. Okay, also workflow and process improvement. Format was live, now it's recorded, right? Registration URL is not applicable anymore. The recording URL is on my website. I didn't update my event calendar, so I don't have it handy here. But while we're on the subject, I can grab it real quick. All we have to do is go into Nerd Buzz here. So if we go to, let me back up. Oh, it doesn't have me logged in. Let me log in real quick. With Kajabi, when you're the owner, you have to kind of log in from the back end to get out to the front end of your own website and be recognized as someone who's logged in. In other words, you can't use the standard sort of user login. So I'll go to the course locker. Once you're logged into my site, if you've gotten this, and I think all of you, if not most of you have, you go right into Nerd Buzz. Nerd Buzz is a free course essentially, but that's where I'm putting all this content now. If you don't have it, just go to the new.nerdenterprises.com and go to Nerd Buzz here, and there'll be a button there where you can click to quickly get access. Also, if you simply opt in on the home page, I automatically grant you the access to it. So either way, and here's where the Zooms are, and here's where what last week's is. So I can just click through real quick, grab the URL, and paste it in there. So that's where the recording is, right? So that's just to get one that's in the past, right? So now you can just kind of see the colors kicking in. If it's in the past, it's going to be black. And then let's do one for the future. All right, so next week's I already have set up. Where did you go? There it is. So let's add next week's. Slack tips and tricks, right? It's going to be the 26th, 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. All right, so Slack I would probably call communications for a category. Right, and here it is. I told you this before. I wasn't lying. It'll ask me to create a new option if it's not already there. I can go back and change the color later. This is going to be recorded, or this is going to be live rather for now. And the registration URL I have. So I'll drop that in. This I can even put in a little to be determined kind of thing. And here would be my notes. So just from my event calendar, while I'm here, I'll paste in my notes just so you can kind of see what this looks like. See, it does render links like this. And so, like I said, the notes thing here is pretty scaled down. It's not a whole lot of formatting, but it's it's there and it's useful. And in some ways, I like it because it forces you to keep things simple because it doesn't allow you a whole lot of formatting. Sometimes I get tripped up while I'm trying to take notes, trying to format them beautifully. And that actually slows me down. It's like, just get the notes down. Don't worry about the formatting. You can go back and clean it up later. Otherwise, you fall behind the presenter, the instructor, while you're trying to take notes, right? It's one of the reasons when I'm presenting something, I try to tell people, hey, don't take notes. You can go back to the recording later, stay focused so you can keep up with me and, and ask questions. And then, again, later on, you can review the recording. I mean, just this morning in 97 and Up, because on Tuesday, we're going to be going over how to do cleanup jobs and some of the tools that I use when I'm doing a cleanup job. And we recently did a Zoom on that subject. And so I gave everybody in 97 and Up the link and said, do me a favor for your homework, review this recording and then come prepared on Tuesday with your notes so that we can go over that. And a lot of people, looked at the video already right away yesterday and commented in our Slack workspace that they picked up a lot of things that they missed last time around when they watched it, right? So a lot of times these things, especially when it's an hour long, there's just going to be, you're not going to pick all of it up in one shot, right? So a lot of times it's useful to go through these things, a few times and fill in your notes as you do each time. So that's important. So now we've got one that's in the future, and of course it's color coded accordingly, right? So again, it's just these little visual cues make the experience a lot better in terms of being able to quickly see, okay, this one's in the past. It should have a recording URL. I can go watch the recording. This one's in the future. Let me just add it to my calendar. This one's happening today. Let me make sure I've got time on my calendar for the day to attend this one, right? So the calendar view, definitely going to be helpful with this kind of thing. And then we can just go ahead and start adding resources to it, right? So now it's kind of ready. But before I go on, because what I was going to do is Hector had included a link to a page on his website where he put in some upcoming webinars. So I thought I'd maybe kind of steal that from him and use just those as examples to fill in more stuff in here. But before I do, I want to kind of stop for a minute and give you all the chance to unmute. And if you have any suggestions for what else you would think might be nice to include in this, now's the time. And of course, if you have any questions. Everybody's so quiet. Making me feel all lonely.
Seth, I noticed with one of them you had put in the TBD for the live recording, but
Yeah.
it didn't give you an error. Like it actually allowed you to do it even though you set it as a URL field.
Correct. It doesn't validate it that way. In fact, it actually renders it as a link, but the link's it's going to try and take you to /NA on the web. It's a little weird, but it's just you can do it. It'll let you do it. It's just a link that'll take you nowhere. So if you're using this to present to others, you may want to just leave that blank. Because, yeah, if I put TBD here even, again, it's going to think I'm trying to go to tbd.com or something.
Right.
So you could even put like, I can't type today, do not click. Right? Or you can just leave it blank. But sometimes a blank, the reason I like to put something in there is because I think a blank sometimes leaves somebody wondering, did they forget to put that in? They don't really think about it and realize, well, it's not available yet because there's no recording, or in this case, there's no registration URL because it's in the past, so it's not applicable, which is why I had put n/a. But the reality is on something like that, people will figure it out. So yeah, it's not going to give you an error. It's going to assume, like I can, it's going to assume you want it rendered as a link, and then it's going to do, it's going to sort of act accordingly. Now, the other thing is, if you wanted to embed this in your website, right, here's your share option. Better yet, let's embed the calendar view, right? So we can share, create a shareable calendar view link. And so here's just a link that will take people. You can link straight to kind of an external, so it'll look like this. But if you actually want to embed it in a page, kind of like I've done here on my events with my event calendar, right? Then you would go down here where it says embed this view on your site. It actually opens up a separate page, and you just copy and paste this code wherever it is in your site that you paste HTML code. You don't need to worry about what any of this means, right? The only thing you may want to wind up playing with after you've pasted it in is the height and width on this, right?
Yep.
And there's also options here, like do you want them to be able to access the view controls? I usually figure, why not? Let them filter it and sort it and play with it all they want, right? They're not going to break anything. They don't have access to edit anything in here. It's view only. Right, and here it gives you a rendering of what it's going to look like on mobile versus desktop. So notice the mobile looks a little crunched in, right? So we might want to change this to like a 2-week view, which I had done actually in both cases anyway on my website. I used the 2-week view.
I never noticed before that's got the downloadable CSV. So if you actually have a whole calendar full of stuff, people could actually download a whole
Yes.
like event
Yep.
item listing.
Yeah, which is awesome. Plus, even while it's embedded, like see on mine, you can click here where it says view larger version, and that will pop it open in a separate window so that you just have a bigger playing field, so to speak, to use to play with it, right? And sometimes what I'll do, I did this on a website for somebody yesterday where I embedded an Airtable base. And what I did was I recorded a short video explaining that, there's little things in here that make this interactive, including this. And so it's like a 2-minute video that sits above it that explains how to use it, right? Which is obviously very helpful. Okay, so that's how you can get this embedded. So if you want this on your website to present to the world, to say, hey, here's upcoming events in our industry, this is a great way to do it. So let's get this filled in. Let's get some more events in here. I did bookmark a link to Hector's list, his webinar list. So let's go ahead and bring that up. Hopefully Hector won't mind I'm stealing from him, but at least I'm telling you where it's coming from and giving him credit. So what he's done here is he's embedded a Google Calendar on his web page, right? Same idea, really, just a different way of doing the same thing, right? All right, so here's one that's at 1 p.m. today. What I'm not clear on is if this is rendering based on my time zone. So let's click on it.
That's a good question.
Yeah, see on Airtable, I know it will render based on the right time zone based on the IP address, right? So this I'm not sure about, but what I can do is just fill it in and hope for the best on this, right? If I click more details, I think then it will create a pop-up here in my own Google Calendar, which will show me the time zone. Yeah, so now it updates for the time zone. So this is actually at 10 a.m. my time, right? So that's always something I think about that's important when you're doing something like this, is make sure it's clear that like mine probably, I don't know how it would render. I would love for somebody who's in another time zone to go to my events calendar on my website and tell me if it's probably not going to update these because this is kind of static. So you have to kind of do your own conversion time zone wise on these things. And what I will probably do now that I've just realized that is put a little note here that says all times are Pacific time, please update your calendars accordingly or something.
Yeah, when I click on it, Seth, it's showing 11 a.m. my time.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Yeah.
On my Airtable thing.
Yep.
Rockin'!
That is a win, dude. That is a win.
Airtable rocks. Airtable rocks. All right, so at least now we understand the behavior. Okay, good. That didn't actually get added to my calendar. So let's go here, and I wish it would let me copy and paste. Well, I can cheat and copy it to my calendar and then copy and paste from that. Okay, recertification, is that misspelled? Oh, no, it probably should be hyphenated, right?
Tiffany, I'll tell you.
Tiffany?
No, it's correct, Seth.
Okay.
It's just a
It is one word?
word.
All right, so let's add a new record. And by the way, when you're in the master list view, the grid view, this little double arrow here is also a way of expanding it to a view that for data entry purposes is most definitely easier. All right, so this is going to be from 5 to 7:30. Did I click on a different one this time? That's weird. No. It picked a weird time when it converted to my calendar. All right, so we'll ignore that. 1 p.m. is 10 a.m. my time. So let's go back here. And the date is today. And it's 10 a.m. And it's pretty forgiving about how you format the time when you enter it. So you can just kind of go in there and type. It's the only thing that's a little annoying is tabbing through. You have to manually with your mouse go select that. So 11 a.m. is the ending time, right? And who's the author on this one? Is this Hector himself? It's not clear. Let's just pretend it is. So I'll link to an author. I'll put Hector Garcia. Okay, and then add new record named Hector Garcia. Okay, while I'm here, I can quickly go in and fill him in. It's Hector Garcia, CPA. I think that's what he uses for his educational stuff. I know it's QBK accounting for for his actual accounting stuff. So his website, I believe, is hectorgarcia.com. There it is. There he is. All right, and then I could fill in his Facebook page, but
his website's not secure. He doesn't have an update on it.
Oh yeah, look at that. Oops, Hector, gotta fix that. It used to be that you only cared about that if you were taking payments over a website, but nowadays actually it's become more and more important. And as you can see, Chrome makes it very clear. So that might scare people. So Hector?
And it dramatically impacts your search results also.
Oh, interesting. Good point, Matthew. Thank you. So Hector, get a security certificate on this site. You can go to Cloudflare and get one. You can even use a shared security certificate with them to save some money on it, but get one. They're not that expensive anymore.
So I literally just tagged him like right before we went down this little trail to like show him like, hey, Hector, Seth's showing your website. And I'm hoping he didn't jump in quite yet as we're telling him. Sorry, Hector.
Well, anyway, and let's just underscore all of that with rest assured you can trust Hector, right? It's just a clerical administrative thing that I'm sure Hector will follow up on and get a security certificate on the site.
I love the look of his new site.
Yep, it's a great new site. I always check these things. You go straight to the bottom to see. So the theme is by Imon Themes. So if you want to find this theme, if you like what he's done, and it does, it's nice and clean. I love the layout. It's great, and I love Hector. So there's that. So now that I'm done with this pop out for the author information, I can X just this window and get back to the rest of the information for this webinar. So the category is definitely, what would we call this? It's not bookkeeping courses. It's, we could even call it QuickBooks Online Certification, right? Something like that. Suggestions from the peanut gallery? What would you call this categorically?
Pro advisor certifications.
Thank you, Matthew. Or vertification, right? If you're doing it vertically. Okay, so again, I can add that. This is going to be live. The registration URL. Where did that go? That should be here. Oh, and a good idea to include the pricing, right? That's something we didn't include. There's the registration URL. So we can certainly add a field for pricing. Was somebody saying something?
Yes. Is there a way to create a zap to go from a calendar into this Airtable?
Well, yeah, but it would have to be your own calendar. So yeah, you could do something where that in Zapier that says if I add an appointment in my calendar, add it to Airtable. But the only question is how to distinguish appointments that you would want in here from your calendar versus those that you wouldn't. And to take it a step further, and this is just from my own perspective, this doesn't mean it's the right or wrong way. It's just none of this is right or wrong. It's just what works for you. I personally would, if anything, maybe want it to go the other way, like where if I added something here, it would stick it on my Google Calendar.
What about after you were done? If you could have it set up like with Zoom, where the recording, wherever it's saved, could automatically be added to the record for future.
The only way you could do that is if you're using Zoom Cloud, so that the recordings are stored in their cloud, which, as I experienced firsthand, gets extremely expensive very quickly.
Yep.
That's the only problem with that. Now, what I could do, since you would be dependent upon where the instructor puts that recording also, right? Because we're talking about attending somebody else's webinar. In my own case, when I get these recordings done, well, these are now getting uploaded directly to Kajabi, which, by the way, I just freaking love. It's so nice that Kajabi lets you actually upload the videos directly to them. Then, of course, I put them on YouTube and Vimeo and link back to the Kajabi site. But for example, with my when I do my private sessions with people and I want to upload the recordings that they get, those go into box.com. And I could theoretically create a zap that says when I've added a recording to a particular folder, add it into this record in Airtable. The other problem, Matthew, that I've had, and I have a feeling if anybody knows how to resolve this, you would, is I've run into challenges with Zapier trying to add something to an existing record. I can't figure out how to dynamically look up the record and say, add this in this field on that existing record. I can see how I can find the ID for a specific record and add that. But every time I've tried to say, hey, find this, and do a lookup on the record to figure out which record to stick, let's say, that URL in from box.com, can't figure it out. Maybe that's something you and I can sit down and work out together, and that would make for a great webinar itself to show people how to dynamically access a record in a database through Zapier to update a record as opposed to adding a new one. I've always run into challenges with that.
Let's chat about it. There is a hidden feature for doing lookups, but it would require additional data elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
What ends up happening is so many apps, when they're getting first connected, the find or the search for functionality of Zapier is like second thought in comparison to the first, hey, we just need to get some zaps made. So you're right. It is a challenge quite often, but I'm up to the nerd challenge.
All right, perfect. So let's talk, because that would be really cool if we could A, figure out how to do it ourselves, and B, teach others how to do it. Right? So now going back to my calendar, I have, the next thing that Hector had in there. And once again, it's lit up in red because it's happening today, right? Notice also, if I want to add a record specifically to today, notice there's a plus sign there. So when I do that, obviously it's going to pre-populate the start time, because this calendar is initially driven by the start time, so it populates that in there, right? So again, little things. I always tell people, look for these subtle little things. They mean something. Some coder didn't randomly say, let's stick a plus sign in there because it'll look cute, right? Every time you see something like that appears somewhere, some way, it means something, and it usually means that there's going to be something you can use it for that's incredibly useful. Notice also here you have a filter, a little filter option. So, and that refers, I believe, just to this sidebar. So it's showing either all records or records with dates or records without dates. In this case, there'd hardly be a record without a date, so it's sort of irrelevant. If I click this little X, it will hide this whole record list altogether. And sometimes that's what you want. What else can we do? Within this, right? Let's go back to the master table. And now that I've got a couple of things in here,
did you do the image?
By the way, we can copy and paste the author like that. Matthew, what was that?
Did you add an image for the event yet?
No, but you could, right? That would certainly be what you would do here with the attachments, right? So let's add an image for today's. You know what? I just deleted them out of my folder this morning, but that's okay. I also saved it. So let me go into my my other Airtable calendar, and so track your educational resources in Airtable. I just let me download that. Okay, so now in attachments, you can just click here in this kind of window, or click the plus sign rather, and it expands a dialog, so I can just drag and drop. Or on the left, I used this one recently where I just did a web search and grabbed a grabbed an image that way. Just be careful about copyright stuff. But if you're using this kind of just internally, it doesn't really matter too much. But if I take the one I just downloaded from my actual calendar, my event calendar, what I want to point out, anytime, I learned this the hard way, anytime you're going to upload an image to Airtable, make sure there are no spaces in the name, and don't get crazy with special characters. Best bet is just use dashes to separate words if you want to do that, to make it easy to read the name of the image. But you do not want spaces, especially if you plan to use Zapier with this stuff. That's what I learned the hard way, is any kind of space in this, it won't push it through the API from Zapier. You'll get an error. So important little nugget right there. All right, so we just drag it over and choose upload, and now it's got an image. Now, another cool thing you can do, all right, first of all, before I go there, so that's how to attach things, images. Like I said earlier, you might attach a PDF that's given out, like a handout kind of thing. And now back to when we're in the master list, you can also group this, right? So grouping is one of the first things I discovered about Airtable that I absolutely loved. Think of it as a pivot table, but not based on values, based on any piece of information you'd want to pivot on. That's what grouping really does. So I can group this by category. And instantly it just breaks up my table here into categories. And notice, again, every little symbol actually means something. You see these little arrows? These are to zip these things up. And if I right-click one of them, I can expand all, collapse all, expand, just that one section. Right? So again, it's a handy way. If I want to kind of go through, especially as I've filled this out with a lot of information, I can quickly see, how to organize this in different ways. Now, what you might want to do is, because this is still the master list. So what I might do is remove the grouping. Okay. Let's duplicate the view, right? This is how you make a copy. This is how you create a report in Airtable. We'll duplicate the view. We'll call this by category, right? And now we'll group it by category. Right, and now I have more views in my list. I have master list by category and the calendar. And by the way, you can reorder these, right? I might want the calendar, maybe I want the calendar as my sort of first view. Right, and if you start accumulating a lot of views, don't worry, you have a search where I can start typing category and it will find the by category. That came in really handy for me where I started using Airtable to track all of my private sessions with clients. Because what I realized I could do and now have set up, and I'm going to be rolling out a course on this actually shortly, how to completely automate your coaching business using the process I've developed, because now I have one log in Airtable for every private session I have for every client, and then I carve out a separate view for each client where it's grouped by that client, and I can share just that view. Notice when I'm in this view, it has its own unique share option. So I can share just this view with the client so they can't see all the other clients' stuff. They can only see their own because I'm only sharing the view that's sort of grouped for them. That's in their case, it's actually filtered for them. Right? So that's another thing we can do, especially as this list starts to accumulate. And let's say I'm back in my master list, is, grouping is one way, but I can also filter this. And let's say I want to filter this by category and say, I only want to look at the marketing stuff. Right? I don't have any marketing stuff. I only want workflow and process improvement. So you can quickly filter the list to see if that's what you want to focus on, to see just those things, right? And then I can certainly group it within that, maybe by author, right? That's another thing I can do. Let's get rid of the filter. So we're back to seeing everything. I might want to, let's create another duplicate. And we'll call this by author. So this is really exactly like creating reports off of your master database. So here we'll do group by author. Boom. So now you can see, if you like Hector better than me, you can focus on just his stuff, right? I would. I told Hector I was going to be giving him a lot of love today. So you can keep going with this. You can obviously, keep adding to this and keep evolving this kind of thing. The trick now, I think, especially once you've got the basic infrastructure built like we do here in the master list, and I actually do want that first, is to now get it filled in with lots of data. Because what happens as you start filling it in, with lots of data is you'll start coming up with other ideas. Like earlier, I thought of something else that I hadn't thought of before that I now forget what it was that might be nice to include here. Anybody remember what I said? There was something I said a few minutes ago that I was like, oh, we can include that too.
Hey, Seth,
Yeah.
can you make any of these repeatable? Like if it's going to repeat every 2 weeks?
Unfortunately, no. There's no, and that, by the way, is why, if you remember, if you were on last week's, when we looked at using Airtable for tracking subscription renewal dates, there's no way to create any kind of recurrence. All you would do is, like, let's say it's for my Zoom, you can copy a row, right? In fact, I do that in my own calendar. So I can say, zoom in with Seth, just generically, because I maybe want a placeholder in here, for the fact that it's going to be every Friday. And so what I do is I would set one for, let's say, next week in here. This is going to be, they're always 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific. And you can copy and paste that just to make it quick, because then I just have to change the time. Okay, you can put me in as the author, right? We don't know what the category is. We don't know what any of this information is. Then what I do is you can select the whole record. Nope, didn't want to do that. Let's delete that. You can select the whole record by kind of clicking way out here on the left, and you can copy and paste it. Actually, it's probably easier just to start with this first cell, Control-Shift right arrow, just like you might do in Excel, and then Shift-Enter automatically adds a new row, right? So I can paste this in and then manually just update the date to the following week, right? So this would be for August 2nd. Again, this would be for August 2nd. That's the best answer I have for you for creating like repeating or recurring events, right? And then as you become aware, as I posted these on my own calendar, you can update these here with the additional information that isn't filled in yet.
The field you were going to add was cost.
Was what? Oh, the cost.
Cost,
That's right.
the
Thank you. Who said that?
Alexa.
Alexa, thank you. Gold star. Yeah, so we can add that in. Let's just go all the way out to the right because you kind of have to do that. So we'll, actually, I don't have to go to the right. Wherever I want to add the column in. So I might want to do, where would I want to put that? Maybe right before the category. So I can right click on the category and choose insert left. Cost. We can format this for currency. Okay, notice you can set the precision, like how many decimal places. Obviously, we wouldn't allow negative numbers. That would never really fit. It's not like I'm going to pay you to come to my webinar, right? Right, and then of course for mine, for the Zooms, it's going to be 0. Right, but if we wanted to add my bulletproof bookkeeping course, because remember we said it was going to be for courses and that kind of thing too. Right, the starting and ending time would be irrelevant, so we actually would probably leave those blank. The cost would be, well, if you're getting it now, it's $497 until I finish rolling it all out. Right, bookkeeping courses, this is definitely a recorded format. Registration URL, let's go to the website and go to courses. And by the way, 97 and up is now completely up and running on the new site. I just actually yesterday finished adding in a bunch of the lessons from the core course for that. Here's bulletproof bookkeeping, right? And we'll copy that registration URL in there. Recording URL is sort of irrelevant because the whole thing is a whole bunch of recordings, right? And here you can even make notes, you know, maybe make a reminder for yourself of where you're at in the course, something like that. By the way, you can also comment on these records here, right? Which is kind of nice because you can just log different comments that will have context in terms of timing and whatnot. So it's another way of adding notes, but with the context of date and time and that kind of thing. So we can add that. And now we have something that's got the cost. Of course, the author would be me again. And boom. All right, so now let's see what this looks like on the calendar because there's no date associated with it. I'm just kind of curious. It won't show up because it would need a date. It does show up here, right? But again, for the calendar view, it would be irrelevant. So this is where we might say over here, under all records, only show me records with dates. And look at that. So when I didn't even know that. When it does that, it actually breaks it up. It looks like by week, right? So here's week of July 12th, July 19th, July, or maybe it's breaking up by day even. So that's really cool. I'd never actually done that before with this view. And that, my friends, is kind of the end of the hour. I haven't been checking the Facebook feeds to see if anybody's got like questions there.
Would this be something that you could use to, if you find short little videos that other people have put together that you want to save, kind of like a knowledge base?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could even create a separate table for that kind of thing, you know, if you wanted to. Where, in fact, I've done that with I've started to do that with our 97 and up calls, right? With our calls that we do every Tuesday and Thursday, I've got an Airtable base so that you guys who are members can look up the subject. And then I've been, you know, updating this recently, actually, where I'm starting to put those in the new website. And as I do, I'm adding the links so that you can use Airtable to kind of track what subjects I want to watch the video on, and then click the link that gets you right over to where the recording is in the course. Of course, you have to be logged into the website for the link to get you there. Otherwise, you're going to get the login screen. But yeah, and absolutely, you can build your own kind of version of that with respect to all of the recordings and resources. I might even suggest creating a table if you are enrolled in my Bulletproof Bookkeeping course, where you might create your own list of the lessons, right, with a link to that particular lesson and any notes, or a link to OneNote like I suggested earlier, where you have the more detailed notes. It's always about deciding which of these apps is going to become sort of command central for how I manage this, and then creating the breadcrumbs if you're using other peripheral apps, like OneNote for the more detailed, better formatted notes and that kind of thing. But definitely, that's a great idea. Anyone else?
Hey, Seth, I think you had some questions for the episode today. Did you check those?
For the episode today? Oh, hold on. Let me go check. I did actually download those earlier. Let me open it up.
What did you do?
Matthew wants to know, how many alligators does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Linda Artisani. Where'd she go? I'm Tiffany. I'm from Canada. I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm the real Tiffany.
And Tammy wants to know, what business advisors do I follow? It's a good question. Probably the primary business advisor that I follow is a guy who's very much a mentor in my personal life. He's nobody you would know, but he's a CPA I've done a lot of work with over the years. Got to know him many years ago and sort of latched onto him. And he's the first person I go to whenever I have a question, whenever I'm stuck on something, whether it's client relationship stuff or it's actual technical accounting, especially taxes, because he's a CPA. He's been the VP of taxation at a large accounting firm. And long story short, just broke away and he's rebuilding his own firm again. He had previously built a firm and sold it. Now he's back to running his own again. So he's my primary person. His name is Barry Goldstein. But again, none of you would know him. He's not even on social media or anything. He has no interest in social media. And he's got more business than he knows what to do with, which is one of the reasons why I respect him, because this guy has built up something, very, very substantial, using old school marketing, word of mouth. His whole thing is he's got an amazing referral network. Where he just constantly gets referrals. Anybody who knows him, if anybody else that they're talking to even hints or sneezes at needing any kind of financial help, they're like, oh, you got to talk to Barry Goldstein. It's like, it's not even a question. You don't even hesitate. You say, Barry's the one. And he's not cheap, but there's a reason for that. He's really good, really experienced, been doing this for like over 40 years, I think. He's been a CPA, so he's the guy that I go to when I need advice. As far as social media people who you might be familiar with, who I like to follow, to be honest, I spend most of my time just developing my own stuff. I don't have a lot of time to go follow others, but the few people that I do like to follow, of course, Gary Vaynerchuk. I love watching his videos. I find them very motivating and inspiring. Some of you might not love his, he curses like a drunken sailor, but that doesn't bother me. When I'm off the air, I can be that way myself. So I just kind of curtail it when I'm live, because I know that does put some people off, and I don't want to turn people off. I want to turn people on, not in the way you think. So I love Gary Vaynerchuk. I love Tim Ferriss. I love listening to his podcast. Tim has a great podcast. Who else? I got to give props to Hector. I don't do it enough. He's always touting me, and I don't probably reciprocate nearly enough with him. But I love Hector. I love what he's done. I think what he's done is amazing. I love the fact that he always names me as the person who inspired him initially. I remember many years ago, it was like my second Slater conference. And prior to that, I remember getting these, what do they call them on WordPress, a track back or a link back or whatever it is. When it lets you know when somebody else has linked to one of your posts. And I didn't know who on earth he was back then, but I would get a lot of these track backs from what turned out to be his website, where he was just grabbing my videos and throwing them up on his own site. And he reached out to me once and said, "Do you mind if I do this?" I said, "No, of course not. You're giving me a lot of, traffic and whatnot." And then I met him at the Sleater conference, and he introduces himself. He came running up to me. He's like, "Oh, I'm Hector Garcia. I'm the guy who, puts all your videos up." And I'm like, "Oh, cool," but I still didn't really have the context of, like who he was and what he was doing. But that was many, many years ago. And to see the way he's grown and evolved, I have much, much respect for Hector and everything that he's done. And now he's, in terms of YouTube subscribers, he's surpassed me. He's gone way beyond me. I think he's got like over 40,000 subscribers. I'm still, I only have like 17,000 subscribers, right? So he's kicked my butt in that department.
Only 17,000.
Only 17,000.
Yeah, how do you get more? Because I'm like pulling teeth getting the drip.
You're not going to love my answer to that, honestly, but it's really about just producing good content and getting it out.
Uh-oh. It's a secret. We lost your... It cut out.
Your headset does
Matthew Fulton, did you mute him?
I know. Did you do something?
We can't hear you, bud.
Is
he doing it on purpose? Are you doing that to him?
No. His headset does that every once in a while.
You're muted.
You're muted, Seth.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes.
That's weird.
Now I did that one though. Just kidding.
And then there's some other people that it's saying I am muted. That's weird.
You were.
But not now. You're fine.
Muting you.
Matthew's a co-host, so do I have to demote you, Matthew?
Yes, you do.
I think so.
That's not Matthew. That's the American Tiffany.
That's the American Tiffany.
That's hilarious. A few of the obvious people, maybe they're not so obvious, but I love this guy Jay Shetty on Facebook. You may have seen his videos. It has nothing to do with accounting, really not even to do with business. It's more about philosophy of life. His tagline is "Making Wisdom Go Viral," and I love his messages. They're all really good messages, really good reminders. I have his page set in Facebook. You can set a page to show in your feed specifically, meaning like, I want this stuff on top. So his stuff, back to the business realm, Gene Marks, no question. I love watching everything that Gene does. And Gene is a CPA/journalist who writes and has interviews and does amazing stuff. If you want to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in our economy, insofar as how it impacts small business, Gene Marks, hands down, definitely the one to follow. No question. Did a podcast with him. I interviewed him on The Authentic Accountant. Was incredibly flattered he was willing to take the time to do it, because I learned he doesn't say yes to everyone. A couple other people told me they reached out to him and couldn't get him on theirs. So that means that it really means something that he was willing to do it with me. And he did. In the interview, he gave me a lot of love, saying that he really likes what I've done with the Nerd Enterprises brand and so on and so forth. So I love Gene. Tony Robbins, again, might sound obvious, but you can't dismiss him. He's got really good stuff. And then the recent one that I've mentioned that I kind of forgot about and got reignited about him was Jay Abraham. Jay Abraham is the godfather of all marketing. And the marketing people will say that about him. He's amazing. And so they just really, the reason I got reacquainted with him recently is they released it's a short documentary on his career so far. It's about 45 minutes long. Highly recommend you view that. I think his website is abraham.com or something like that. But Jay Abraham is another one who I really love to listen to him. He's so poised. And so I feel like this guy has done a lot of spiritual work on himself. I definitely admire him from that perspective. When you listen to him, he's very calm. It's clear he's very comfortable in his own skin. He's not arrogant. He's very humble. That's, of course, the other thing that really draws me to him. I can't stand arrogant people.
Hey, Seth, somehow, life's crazy journeys, I literally had the opportunity about 2 years ago sit down in a meeting. It was a personal meeting with Jay Abrams, and I was like,
really?
I to be honest, I didn't have a clue who he was beforehand. I didn't look anything else, and it wasn't until afterwards that somebody told me, and I looked it up. I'm like,
humble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's a really cool guy.
That's the thing. You sit in a room with him, you would never know that he is who he is. He has no need of making sure that you know that. And that's what makes him so great. You know, that's what it's the humility. So he's amazing. He's definitely somebody like if I was going to say, you know what, I want to spend some time today learning from somebody, he would probably be the first person whose website I'd go to today. He's got a ton of free resources on his site. And since most of us, single biggest pain point seems to be growing your practice, this is who you want to go to, and that's what you want to go to him for. And what he's sort of most famous for is cross-pollinating different industries. He's worked with many, many companies over many, many years in many, many different industries, and he'll figure out what's working in another industry in terms of like a process or a workflow and figure out how to plug that into a different industry. And one of the classic examples that he uses, which he doesn't take credit for, this wasn't his doing, but he uses it as an example of what made him see the light here, so to speak, was how FedEx took the federal banking systems process for getting checks from one place to another overnight, and they remodeled that into what became FedEx for a general courier service. And you may also know the FedEx story. It's a pretty interesting one. The guy who came up with it was a student at Harvard, and he presented the business model for one of his classes, received an F on it, and then proceeded to prove the Harvard professor who gave him the F wrong. And that was his way of saying F you. Get it? Anyway, so hopefully that gives you a few resources to check out. But kind of working backwards, I would definitely start with Jay Abraham, because I'm glad I remembered him in this moment, because, again, I just recently got reacquainted with him, and I like I said, much, much, much respect for that guy. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Is Gina still with us? All right,
no, but you can join Gina tonight.
Go see Gina on Facebook, SBAA. She'll do her hangout. They get together at 2, go live at 2:30, having spent the half an hour discussing what they're going to go live about. And always a good time. I wish I could be there myself. I'm just always busy doing other things at that particular hour on a Friday. Maybe I'll surprise them one day. Maybe I'll surprise them today and jump in there. Matthew, have you been going?
Yeah.
He always goes. 5 Eastern.
Every week.
Cool.
How do you know he always goes, Linda?
I watch the replay the next day.
Oh.
Sarah,
You're always there too.
I see we have the American Tiffany Stewart and the real Tiffany Stewart.
That's right.
I like it. All right. Well, I hope this was all enjoyable and pleasant for you. Don't forget, if you're not a member of 97 and Up, you should become a member of 97 and Up. It's where all the cool kids hang out. And you can do it on new.nerdenterprises.com. Just go to courses and you'll see the place to go sign up. You get a free, it used to be $1 for a week trial. Now it's a free week trial. You don't even have to pay the $1. You get a free week trial. Just cancel before the week is up if you hate it. And you won't get charged a dime. Otherwise, your $97 monthly subscription will kick in if you use the coupon code before July 31st. After July 31st, the price goes to $197 a month. I'm basically doubling the price. I should have done it a long time ago. I feel like I've been very kind in not doing that. Everybody who's in the program will swear it's worth three times the price rather than double. Greg has told me that a number of times. So yeah, July 30th. What was the coupon code that I set up for it? Was it, I think it was, I don't know.
97.97.
97.97. See, very, very original and creative of me. So the coupon code is 9797. Enter that when you check out, and you'll be permanently grandfathered or grandmothered in for $97 a month, as long as you don't quit. If you quit and come back, then you'll be at price. That's just the way that goes. So you have till July 31st to get in at the original price, and then it ends. I did this once before, and I promised, and then I kind of backpedaled, and I felt bad. I promise you I'm not going to feel bad this time, because we're doing 2 calls a week. I'm getting the recordings up pretty quickly these days, sometimes the same day. And so I'm doing a lot of work, and I am adding what I believe is a ton of value. So I'm not going to backpedal this time. I'm going to leave it at $197 a month. So if you want to get in at $97, do it now. I don't mean to give you a rush job. I'm just saying I would love to have you all in it, and I would love to have you all in at the original price. Those of you who aren't already there. There's that, and Bulletproof Bookkeeping. I'm almost done with the course. So that's another one. Get in, get there now, because then the next thing I'm rolling out is QuickBooks Online for property management. I'll see you all around the web.